What is the point of false patriotism? This is a question that really needs to be answered because there are people across the country who are well-meaning conservatives on the ground who are not people who are plugged in to deeply ideological conversations that are happening on the internet and in academia, who are trying to assert the old order, but I don't think it's going to work. And I probably shouldn't have called it false patriotism, but it is kind of fake in a way, because you can't simply take a rotten building and give it a new paint job and think it will do just the same job as the building did in previous eras. If you don't actually fix the sort of substructure of it, then the whole thing will just come crashing down with this nice shiny new paint job. But again, it's not I'm not trying to be harshly critical of the people doing this. I appreciate, in fact, the fact they're doing this, but it's not going to solve the problem. So I thought we'd have a look at what the problem is. So, as the Daily Mail report, Tories in Oldham Council are pushing for hundreds of schools in the area to show a picture of the Queen, fly Union Jack flags all year round, and teach pupils the national anthem. I mean, the fact that they don't do this is indicative that there was a problem before, right? Oldham Borough councillors will tomorrow debate a motion titled For Queen and Country that discusses potentially installing a picture of Queen Elizabeth and going through what we just said. Furthermore, they're going to aim to secure an official stance against cancel culture and an affirmation from elected representatives protecting the notions of freedom of speech and democracy. Again, all nice, but this doesn't address the root of the problem. Why are there people trying to cancel things? What did they get in their heads to make them think that was acceptable? Why is there a commitment to undermine our freedoms, our country, and our way of life? You can, again, you're looking at the outgrowth of the problem, but you're not looking at the core root of it. And that's what needs to be cut off. If approved, the Chief Executive of Labour-run Oldham Metropolitan Borough Council will write to Michael Gove and Gavin Williamson asking for support for the plans. The motion states, saying that you're proud to be British should not be a source of shame. There is nothing wrong with patriotism of flying our national flag. It is one of the many things that binds our society together. And that's true, but it is, as you say, a source of shame for some people. And what happened to those people? How did the idea that their own country is shameful get into their heads? And the answer is the schools. The schools put this into their heads. Now, Roger Scruton described this as the proud islanders narrative, or the oppressive imperial empire narrative of the history of Britain that's taught in the schools. And for the last 20 years, since the Tony Blair regime took over, we've had the evil imperialist view of history put in, rather than the proud islander view of history put in. Now, if you're not teaching a patriotic view of what the country is to children, they will grow up being ashamed of their country. They will grow up thinking it's evil. And neither of these are true or false either, right? They're both true in some extent. It's about what you highlight to put the points across. You can highlight all of the terrible things that Britain has done, or you can highlight all the good things that Britain has done, and you will get a general preference one way or another. Again, they're both true narratives to an extent, but they're also slightly untrue to what they're leaving out. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have, the glorious golden narrative that Britain never did anything wrong or anything like that. There are things that Britain's done wrong, but these are always in context, as in, what was it like at the time? And are we judging from their contemporary standards or from our modern standards, where after all of the events have taken place and Britain came up on top and we established the values that lead what we did to being wrong, do we then use those values to go back and look through the history and say, therefore, Britain was wrong at every stage to get to that point? Because morality is an evolving perspective. It's not actually simply there is one universal, eternal morality, Platonic morality. Morality is actually something that people do on the ground and live in day-to-day life. But anyway, so this house built on sand, the painting, the giving the new coat of paint to the old building that's falling down, it's like a house built on sand, and it's just going to wash away into the sea, unfortunately. So the motion continues. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is in fact a unique bastion of freedom that we should be proud of the outstanding role it has played across the world in education, art, culture, science, engineering, and exporting democracy and the rule of law. We all have heroes in our communities, whether they're historical or present day, and this council should reject the phenomenon known as cancel culture and holds these truths to be self-evident that of freedom of speech and democracy. Truths will be cherished and defended. And don't get me wrong, I support all of that, but it's not addressing the problem. So if approved, they'll erect a picture of the Queen and future ruling sovereigns and blah, 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 right? But how do you stop the leftist termites from going in and saying, okay, well, we're going to continue eating away at your foundations? At the end of the day, the building will still collapse, even if the new paint job over your civilization looks good. Because if the civilization has been programmed to lose faith in its own values and institutions and history, then it can't survive. And it is the leftist education that's causing this. Every generation of children is currently being taught leftist history, leftist race politics, and leftist identitarianism. That has to be the thing that stopped. And once that's stopped, you won't even need to put the new paint job over the old building, because the old building won't look so old, and the faults that it has will look aesthetic. They'll look quaint and appealing, and they will be homely and comforting, because the pillars of the thing will be firm and hold the thing up forever if you continue like that. So the Conservative group also wants the council to reaffirm and support the sovereignty of the United Kingdom and its overseas territories. And if the motion passes, then it will be adopted by schools across the country, or it should be adopted by schools across the country. Again, I agree that that would be a nice thing to do. But the thing is, the fact that this is necessary when it wasn't necessary in previous eras indicates the scope of the problem. If we didn't need to do this 50 years ago, then why does it need to be done now? And it needs to be done now because you can feel the thing shaking. You can feel the left-wing termites going evil, 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 gnawing away at the moral foundations of the country. That's what has to be addressed. None of this will prevent the problem and prevent the collapse. And you can see this, in fact, very much in one of the quotes here they give from Liberal Democrat councillor Sam al-Hamadi, who told The Express that he would not dismiss the idea, but it seemed like an attempt to get on a cultural bandwagon. Why would we not want a cultural bandwagon that was patriotic to Britain in Britain? Why would he be like, I don't understand why you want this? Why wouldn't he be committed to it as well? He lives in Britain. He's a part of this civilization. Why could he not? And the point being, though, is that he simply doesn't believe it. If you don't believe in it, the magic doesn't work. But if you do believe in it, the magic does work. And the way that you come to bring yourself into the story is how you end up believing in it. I mean, he probably thinks the UK is a white supremacist country that needs to be torn down anyway. But the point is, why aren't all our parties patriotic? How can there be anti-patriotic parties in Britain like Labour and the Liberal Democrats? How is that possible? Why should this be tolerated? How can this go on? And it can't. And it's to do with a foreign ideology that we allow to propagate in our schools. And if we want to be able to save this country, that foreign ideology has to be taken out of the schools. It's as simple as that.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to prelotuseaters.com and get access to all our premium content.
Things like our book club, where we examine classics like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and examine the themes that underpin it, and now we're getting worryingly close to that, or modern books like Mark Sidwell's The Long March, which is how exactly we ended up in the current cultural situation we're in and what Conservatives can do about it. Or you can check out the other series we have, such as our Contemplation series, where Hugo and Josh decided to, in the latest one, have a look at an examination on the ways that other elections have been rigged for no reason at all. Or you can check out our Epoch series, which is one of my personal favorites because this is where I get to talk about history. And I love talking about just random things from history. And one of the great things we can do with this series is talk about those things that aren't so often discussed. So, I mean, you can talk about Xerxes' army, the vast army that invaded Greece during the Greco-Persian Wars. Or we can go through things like Herodotus' view on the Scythians. Who are they? You probably don't know, but they used to be quite an important people a long time ago, and they're very, very interesting. We've got some really good reports about them. Or we've got premium podcasts, which is things we generally don't want to put outside of the paywall because we might get in trouble for them, such as the list of things that Alex Jones was right about. Or we do just very interesting discussions because there are things that we do lots of work on. Another one is that I'm particularly proud of is where Christopher Hitchens, the famous new atheist, would have fallen during the modern culture wars, because he probably wouldn't have been very woke. But we also have lots of interviews and articles and other things on the website that you can sign up to enjoy, and we're really proud of them.
So if any of that sounds good to you, go over to lotuseaters.com and sign up for as little as £5 a month to support us keep the show going, and also to get access to all the content. Thank you and goodbye.